Adam Bandt, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
The Greens, along with the old Democrats, used to be considered the parties where you would look if you wanted to launch a protest vote against the major parties. Why are now people looking for independent candidates outside any party?
Because there are some pretty big issues that are facing the country and the planet, like the climate crisis and the cost of living crisis, and we don't have those being properly addressed through politics at the moment. And people are increasingly looking to parties like the Greens and third voices because we're speaking up about the issues that matter and we're bringing them into Parliament and we're getting change and we're shifting the debate. And I think you're going to see more third voices in the Parliament at this election.
How much are Climate 200 candidates eating into donations that would otherwise help your campaign?
They're not. We had record donations after we launched our campaign. We're doing very, very well. Look, I welcome the entrance of the climate independents into the democratic race. The more voices that are pointing out Liberal and Labor's a poor record on climate, the better. But we're actually not really in competition with the climate independents in any seats, really. The seat of Kooyong is probably the only seat where it could be a climate independent or the Greens that unseats the Treasurer. But we're running a really strong race in the Senate, which of course they're not, and in other seats around the country, in inner city Brisbane and inner city Melbourne and in the northern rivers of New South Wales. We're running strong campaigns and we're the leading third party voices there.
And will you work with, say, in the seat of Kooyong, will you work with the Climate 200 independent with the goal of unseating the Treasurer? You know, is that your goal, to unseat him rather than win that seat yourself?
Well, we really want to win the seat, and of course it is at the moment actually a Greens Liberal seat, and the Treasurer had to spend an enormous amount of money in that seat to hold it from the Greens last time. So we think we're in with a really strong position of taking the seat. If we don't, and it had to go to someone else, then of course I'd prefer that it goes to an independent rather than the Treasurer of a government that's taking public money to use to fund coal and gas in the middle of a climate crisis.
Can I ask, if you ended up in a position with the Greens where you held the balance of power in the Senate, are there any particular bargaining points you would have that are non-negotiable? Like, say, for example, you just mentioned coal. Would there be things that you would insist on that you would think that is our absolute, stake in the ground?
Well, there are some things that we will put on the table and push very, very hard. That's to tackle the climate crisis by stopping opening new coal and gas mines. Now, you can't put the fire out while you're pouring petrol on it. But Liberal and Labor want to open 114 new coal and gas mines, right? That is a climate crime. So we're going to push very hard to say stop opening new coal and gas mines. But we also want to tackle the cost of living. And so our priorities there would be to get dental and mental health into Medicare, to wipe student debt, and to fix the housing affordability crisis. They're the things that we'll be putting on the table. Our approach in the Senate would be to improve rather than block, and we think that history shows that we've got a very good record of doing that and achieving change. But that's what we're going to put on, because I think they're the issues that matter to a lot of people and they're not being raised, certainly not being raised in the election debate so far.
We'll come to dental in a second, but given that the Greens would not win enough seats in the election to govern in their own right, I know you haven't sorted out preferences yet, but don't people who intend to vote Green need to have a sense of, where their vote is ultimately going to be going?
Well, people will have a how to vote card that we'll be handing out on the polling day, and they can choose to follow that or not. And I think one of the things that's worth reminding people about is that parties don't actually allocate preferences, people do. And we always go to great lengths to remind people that you can decide how to allocate your own preferences. But look, we've been pretty clear that one of the things that we've got to do this election is kick this terrible government out. This government does not deserve another term. They've made the climate crisis worse. They've plunged people into poverty. House prices have gone up. We need a change of government. I think you can expect that our how to vote cards, when they're issued, will reflect that. But ultimately, on preferences, people need to know the power's in their own hands.
The Greens are proposing a billionaires tax where people earning huge incomes would face an extra 6% tax. But many of those 131 people would already be some of the country's biggest donors to charities, some of the biggest philanthropic givers. You tax them more and A, they have less to immediately give to the causes that they support, which has a big flow-on effect to major charitable organisations. And B, wouldn't their direct charitable spending be a more efficient and direct use of their resources than having it siphoned through government and then reallocated?
Look, these billionaires during the pandemic made out like bandits. Billionaires in Australia during the pandemic, while everyone else was doing it tough, increased their wealth faster than billionaires in any other country in the world. And mining billionaires more than doubled their wealth. We're saying, they're doing all right. They'll still be billionaires after the billionaires tax is imposed. They'll still have that money. If they want to donate it, then they can do it. But by putting a 6% tax on their wealth over $1 billion, we generate money that you can use to fund things like getting dental into Medicare. So they will still have a lot of money, but it's about them paying their fair share of tax. And as far as the corporations are concerned, we have a situation in Australia where 1 in 3 of the biggest corporations pays no tax. Now, when a nurse pays more tax than a multinational, something is wrong. You mentioned donations. A lot of the donations that these big corporations and billionaires make are to the Liberal and Labor parties, and that's why we've got a tax system that lets them off the hook and asks everyone else to pay the burden.
And Bandt, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Authorised by J. McColl, Australian Greens, Canberra.